So of course, as I mentioned, we are more than happy to be presenting to you today and getting you familiar with the GraphCMS platform, and definitely looking forward to what we could work on as well in the future, in our future cooperation here between GraphCMS and Salsita. As also mentioned, so basically we will do in the first place, brief introduction, then the user journey, and the demo itself, so that you can get familiar with the platform. And at the end of the session, the Q&A. Now, from the previous conversation, and of course, knowing your organization, looking at your website and the projects that you are working with, what I understand is that you're a very innovative company, and basically one of the top priorities for you is, of course, to keep on being innovative and being the first on the ground to implement new technologies and cutting-edge technologies, and also delivering cutting-edge technologies and solutions for your clients as well. Now, here within GraphCMS, this is exactly what is also important for us and what is our top priority. Usually companies who decide to work for us, they choose us for many different reasons. One would be, for example, the universal content API, content hub that we provide, because many times when they walk in on our doors, they would want to unify basically their APIs and want to have one central content hub to keep all of that information in one spot, so that content editors can work on it and the developers can simply as well work in one specific spot and query those content and the data that they keep in there. Few things that make it really easy to actually have this central content hub is the fact, one of the facts is that we are a GraphQL native system, the first one out there in the market who have been GraphQL native. This allows us, of course, to have more integrations that, for example, with the RESTful API system, as much as we support mutations, which can allow you to programmatically inject content and data into the system in a very easy way. So that would be one of the integrations that we provide. Then, of course, there are further other ones that are also very, very unique to the GraphCMS platform. For example, our API extensions, so-called remote fields. We will take a deeper look at that during the call as well today. Of course, another main reason is that helps you to actually deliver faster and reduce time to market with those projects is the flexibility, how you can build schemas within our system. And once more again, something that is GraphQL, very GraphQL specific, and I heard already that that is a technology that you are also very much familiar with. So one very specific thing is the union types that we also support, which of course very useful also for giving freedom to the content editors, because in that sense, you can simply allow them to create dynamic layouts as they wish to do so. Then, of course, also important to mention that whenever we are working with a headless system and having a backend service for us, the editorials neither should be left behind, right? So we try to provide, of course, a great editorial experience. One of the key reasons why editors also many times decide to choose us is because of our very, very granular content and condition-based permissions, which is a very unique one also out there in the market at the moment. We will, of course, take a deeper look at that today, a little bit later on the demo. Many customers choose us from the e-commerce market, but also from other industries as well. So we work with a very, very diverse client base. For example, just in the e-commerce space, you will be, of course, working with global leaders like Shure, who are basically leaders within audio products out there in the world. They are using GraphCMS for their global corporate websites in 25 different regions. But we also do work with very innovative startups, for example, AVEC in Brazil, who use our GraphCMS platform for powering their basically advertisement management system. They are a leading business within Brazil, leading business within management platforms for beauty salons and beauty entrepreneurs. But of course, besides the e-commerce cases, marketing and advertising cases, we also do support complex projects, even more complex projects. For example, typical streaming applications like the one in the Nordics that is run by Telenor. So imagine something similar to Netflix that is also easily supported by GraphCMS. and they exactly choose us for the performance, which again comes from us being a GraphQL native system. Of course, as much as we work with a very diverse client base, there are a few things that are also very common amongst all of them. And one of them is that they want to have composable content. They want to also build their own digital experience platform and bring in that tech stack, bring in whatever solution they would like to use, and have the continuous flexibility on that one. And that's what we provide here within GraphCMS. At the end of the day, we believe that a headless system should not be only front-end agnostic, and clients with us should not have an opinionated view on what sort of tech stacks they should be using, what sort of other softwares and other solutions they want to integrate with our platform, but rather have a full flexibility. Hence, we provide a fully backend agnostic system. So in this way, they can remain free in their decision, of course, with their tech stack. Many times, of course, those clients also choose us because they want to be different a little bit than the market itself. So again, they don't want to have that opinionated view, to use the very typical marketing software and so on. But of course, we also support all of that. So exactly, this is where we stand at the moment. GraphCMS moving towards, of course, not only being front-end, but also back-end agnostic, to really give you the possibility, and to all of your clients, to basically integrate everything that they like and truly build their own digital experience platform with us. What we will take a look at today is, of course, typical user journeys. They include with us, of course, in the first place, the implementation. So how to build a content architecture within our very intuitive schema builder. So we'll take a look at that one. Then, of course, the editorial experience, because editors, they do want to collaborate, write, review, and revision and discover content. We'll also take a look at that one today, how they can achieve that within the system. And of course, the customization that is available, exactly what I was mentioning, right? To build your DXP, to bring in custom fields where you would link to other softwares, to bring in, to extend certain APIs that and federate the content from those ones, use mutations, and set up webhooks to create also automation workflows. We'll also take a look at a few use cases. So one of them would be one of our clients who is in the publishing business for biotech companies. They are called BioCentury. They have moved away from us from a Drupal implementation, from rather monolithic system, right? They exactly chose us for the same reason, to actually unify their content and unify their API, and we only working within one spot within the system. They use our API extensions for this. They use our UI extensions, mutations, and so on. So they also extensively use, of course, the capabilities and the flexibility that we provide to actually really have all of that, really have just one content hub. And on another note, for the editorial experience, one case that we have right now with Gamescom, who are basically organizing a large-scale event for gaming studios. Basically, they are all of those gaming studios are currently editing for their digital event the content that is going live for the digital event on the Gamescom platform within GraphCMS. Of course, whenever you need to work with several external companies that they need to come all together within the platform and work together and only edit their own content entries, that, of course, requires a very granular permission system. We'll also take a look at that one today. So let us head down and start off the demo so that you can get more familiar with the system. So on the first spot, GraphCMS is a headless system that comes hand in hand with hosting infrastructure. We are working with AWS on this one. So you have the chance with us to choose, of course, between shared data centers or dedicated clusters. Whenever, for example, your clients are looking for dedicated cluster or better performance during peak time and so on, then a dedicated cluster usually makes sense. We can set you up with dedicated clusters, of course, anywhere in the world where there is AWS, where there is an AWS data center. And what you see on the screen, so those are out of the box our shared data centers that you can always choose out of. So we have 5 right now available out there in the market, out there in the world. And besides that, of course, we have smart caching through a content delivery network. That's what you will see here right away on the map. And let me just refresh here first, because I see we have a newer version. So what you see right now here on the screen, that would be the GraphCMS platform, fully powered by GraphQL, GraphQL native, right? We have several different features that make your, of course, the development of the projects that you're working on easier. Whenever it comes down to our permission systems, you would have different accesses also according to the roles that you are setting up. So, for example, there would be certain features that editors would be seeing, and there would be certain features that developers would be seeing only. Just to start off from the very beginning, we have, of course, several different features here. One would be our schema builder, where you set up all of your templates and your content architecture. Then we have the content editorial interface. So after those templates and models that have been set up within our system, then they can start working on those. And that's where basically the content editors would be living and breathing. Then we have a built-in digital asset manager, where you could keep, of course, all of the assets that you have, all images, all videos, no limitation on the file types. We can certainly keep all of that there and keep as well together that one with the metadata for you. Then the API playground is a very specific feature for the developers, which is a GraphQL native one, where you can just simply query all of the content that is within our system. Then for webhooks was to create some automation and some further settings. Of course, besides the system that allows you to build your project, we also provide support for you. One would be, of course, our built-in chat, where our developers and support are catching all of your questions. So we're always happy to answer those. On another note, we have a very vivid Slack community with right now more than 6,000 people there, where you can also ask all of your questions whenever you would like to. You can also, of course, set up dedicated Slack channels for you whenever, for example, the project requires that complexity, and basically connect you with our developers so that you can discuss integrations and so on. On our enterprise plans, we also provide, of course, a dedicated customer success manager with several onboarding hours to help you get started with the project in a very healthy way. All right. If we move forward, then we can directly take a look at our schema here and all the models and all the templates that we have built for one specific example project that you can, by the way, also access anytime within our system. So we have a couple of examples projects for you. For example, this one, that would be a simple marketing website. As you can see here on this marketing website, we would have several different elements, for example, a navigation bar, some buttons, title, subtitle, and assets that is directly within our digital asset manager. Then we would have flexible building blocks, for example, our logo cloud block here. Then we would have some grid elements. And even further, of course, other flexible building blocks, for example, our testimonials. If we take a look at exactly the architecture behind this model, then we can see how we would build that within the platform. So exactly, we would have a title, we would have a slug, we would have a navigation label, slug title, and those flexible building blocks, which allow us, which are exactly achieved through union types, which allow us to build more dynamic layouts, and of course, give the flexibility to content editors to create those dynamic layouts. Through references, of course, also content reusability comes in place. We have a great granularity when it comes down to references itself. Typical use case would be, for example, a SEO field where you would be keeping all of your different keywords or a group of your keywords and keep on reusing that content and that group of keywords throughout pages, throughout blog post articles, product detail pages, anything you like. And getting back to the point to the references and the granularity of that one. So we support, of course, bidirectional and unidirectional relationships, of course, one-to-one, one-to-many, and many-to-many relationships. When it comes down to the unidirectional relationships, that's, of course, already with GraphQL, the complexity of queries are already better. So you have already better developer experience now. But with the unidirectional relationship, we can even remove further complexity out of your queries. So you can simply set up those ones as well whenever you wish to do so. Of course, whenever you're setting up the schema, you can also choose from many other field types like string, let it be a markdown, single line, multi-line, auto, and basically a slug generator, custom fields through integrations, our built-in rich text editor, and of course, other elements like Boolean value or any other type, yeah. And with enumerations, you can also create a drop-down menu for content editors where they would be simply able to tag and categorize content entries. So that would also allow them at the end of the day to filter through and prioritize certain content entries just directly within the UI. And of course, it can be certainly used as well within the front end. All right. Let us move forward to the content editorial experience. So within the content editorial experience, here we have, of course, all of our different content entries that we can start working on. I could take a look at it from a content editorial perspective. I could take a look at that from a template level, but at a certain point, those templates and those content entries will be growing, right? Some of our customers are reaching, of course, many of them are reaching hundreds of thousands of different content entries. And then they are also reaching, some of them, millions of content entries over time. So they need a fast way to actually prioritize and really drill down on those content entries to find the ones that they really need to work on right on the spot. Exactly for the same reason, we have built-in filtering options. For example, in this case, on our website, we would be having blog posts, so we have a blog there as well. And those blog posts we separate into two different categories. One would be guides, the other ones would be announcements, with setting up permanent views for the content editors and creating also folders for them. We can simply help them structure the content, of course, and basically what they really need to work on. So that's what is happening here. We have a blog post folder where we have guides and announcements. Once I click that as a content editor, I can simply start working on whichever I would like to do so. Of course, you can also combine those filtering options. There are many different ways how you could search here, of course, for keywords as well within the content and so on. All right. Let us take a look at one of the content entries here. And now we reach the point where, as a content editor, we can simply edit content and directly publish it on our website. This is, of course, many times when it comes down to coming from a monolithic system, for example, like for BioCentury, it was very crucial and important to improve their time to market, because with a monolithic system, many times you would need to reach out to the developers to actually publish things on the website. With us, content editors, with a headless system, content editors do have the freedom and, of course, basically the space to just simply publish those content entries. At the same time, they can also follow their own internal workflows. We will take a look at that also in a minute. But first of all, let us just simply start editing this content entry. So as a content editor, I could simply just write here the title, add all of those elements, add, for example, an image directly from our digital asset manager that is built in, replace it even, simply upload it on the spot, and write the other content elements that we have here and fields. At the same time, of course, categorize the content as I was also already mentioning before, with the help of the dropdown, with enumerations, and as well link other content entries where we want to reuse the content. So we took a look at on the page content model, exactly the SEO field that we have here, where we keep a group of our keywords down. For example, in this case, for this specific blog post that is about union types, we use a group of keywords that would be relevant for GraphQL union types, right? So as a content editor, I can simply come in here and find the right group of keywords for myself to keep on reusing that one and add it to this specific blog post. At the same time, I can also use the filtering options even here to just simply find and drill down on that specific content entry that I want to reuse at that time. I can also create one, of course, on the spot. And once more again, the flexible building blocks. Let us take a look at the page model for the page one for this one, because that's easier to understand. So here we would have the flexible building blocks of our pages. In this case, our homepage for this specific website. So exactly this one that we have seen here. As a content editor, I can choose whichever flexible building block I want to add here. So I really have the freedom and the power to create those dynamic layouts. And at the same time, if one day, for example, I decide that our testimonial needs to be moved up on the top, I can just simply do that, or anywhere else with a simple drag and drop option. At the same time, of course, whenever you are working on content, many times what is also a priority is to localize the content for the different countries. So, and of course, whenever you're working on localization, those versions might not be ready yet. So for example, in this case, we have the English version ready within our system. If I turn on here the German version, I could localize simply the content. But if it maybe still needs to go through approval if it gets published to the website, I can also decide to separate the publishing and do local-based publishing. So only publish the English version, let that go live, but let's keep the German version still internally so that we can still review it and work on it. Of course, to let us head back also to our blog post here that we have been working on before. So whenever we are working, of course, all of these content entries, as a content editor, we also should have the opportunity to actually view and see how that content entry would look like whenever it goes live on our website. For that, we have preview URLs that you can simply set up within our system and provide that to the content editors. So whenever they make changes to the content entries, they would be able to see, of course, the draft version on the preview URL for their content entries. Now, of course, many times what happens is that teams follow complex workflows. They also need the possibility to revert back on content entries to make it sure that there are no unwanted changes happening that they cannot revert back on. That's why we have versioning control. We keep 20 different versions for each and every content entry, so that content editors can always revert back on those and combine what actually has changed over time within that content entry. And regarding the workflows. So workflows are achieved within our platform through several content stages, and you can get as granular as you like with that one. And with the help of webhooks. With those ones, of course, we can connect to any sort of internal communication system that your client is using. Let it be Slack, let it be email, let it be anything you like. Some of them are also working maybe with Jira tickets and so on. We can simply automate the process and create the notifications, for example, to create the tickets or to simply notify people on Slack whenever somebody needs to approve a new content entry when it is moved to a specific stage, which in our example would be our approval stage. So for this specific project, we have 4 different stages. One would be the drafting one. So whenever I save this content entry, it would go simply to our drafting stage. Then we would have a QA stage, an approval stage, and the publish stage. The published is the one that goes directly live on our website. Now, before it goes live, Many times you would need an approval internally, right? So in this case, what I can do as a content editor, I could move this content entry, send it to an approval stage, publish it for that one. And with the help of a simple webhook through Zapier, now I have received a notification directly on Slack that notifies me to basically come into the platform, accept or not that new content entry, let it go live, or send it back for further editing. Here, of course, you could also include preview URLs as you wish to do so to make it easier for the admins then who need to accept those changes. You can get as granular, of course, also with the webhooks as you wish to go so. And with the combination of our content and condition-based permissions, of course, you can also limit what content stages should a content editor publish to make it sure that that they publish on exactly the right content stage that they usually work on. All right, so that is pretty much for the content editorial experience. We also have the built-in digital asset manager, which works very similarly to our content editor experience. So you also have here the filtering options, the capabilities. You can keep all of your metadata there as additional when you add additional fields. By default, whenever any asset is uploaded, we are keeping here all of the system relevant information. So for example, the file name, who was it uploaded by, the size, the bits, and so on. So that will be already included. If you want to include further ones, typical use case would be, for example, an alt tag to add besides images and other assets. You can simply do that as well, of course, and create as many fields here for the metadata as you would like to do so. Now for the customization, let us head back to our content editorial experience. So as I was mentioning, of course, as we see the future rather in being not only front-end, but also back-end agnostic, you want to make it sure that you can integrate with all of the different softwares that your clients want to bring along into our system and integrate and build their own digital experience platforms with that one. On one spot, we would have UI extensions for that one, which simply provides the content editors a way to only work within one system. In this case, of course, you could use many softwares. You could use Shopify, other commerce platforms to simply pick product data out of those and allow content editors to pick product data out of those right here on the spot. You could use an external digital asset manager. In this case, we have a UI extension created for Cloudinary as an additional external digital asset manager besides our built-in one. Once I would want to access Cloudinary directly from our content while I'm preparing it and choose the asset from that one, I could simply do so as a content editor here. But of course, there are many ways how you could allow as well, of course, your content, so all of the content editors of your clients to choose from additional software, additional databases, and additional systems as well to make their life as well easier, because they would have, of course, just one software to work on, one content hub. Now, at the same time, we also support, of course, API extensions. I was already mentioning before. So let us take a look at another project for that one. Here we would have a simple example pricing page. So this is just an example, right? That we use to showcase our remote fields. We keep, of course, the pricing details in another software because that is a typical data that content editors usually don't edit. So that is one that is kept within Stripe. Typical use cases for our remote fields, especially in the e-commerce field, would be, of course, pricing data, stock information that you keep in another system that should not be edited. It should just be coming into the system and replacing the need for a middleware, simply be federated with us. Or, for example, legal information, again, that is maybe kept in another database and so on. But of course, besides, for example, on a pricing page, you would have certain other content entries besides the pricing details here. And that's what we keep here within GraphCMS. So we would have, for example, the title, the slug, the subtitle, what we see here. And in our pricing plan model, for example, images, description, title, included features, and so on. And here we can see the remote fields, our API extension, that allows us to have live data in our system coming in directly from Stripe. So if I'm going to go now to our API playground here, and I query that Stripe field, so our remote field here, then I get all of that information directly. Let us take a look at, for example, the description here of our enterprise plans. So that would be this wording. And if I go back here, so right now I'm in Stripe, I can just simply edit, of course, the description here as well. And that's what I'm going to do. I will simply just add here a word. Once I save that product, and I head back to GraphCMS, and I hit again the test for this query, then we can directly see that the data came in live and passes through our system in live from the other system as well. Of course, from a content editorial perspective, you could keep that as IDs, or you could just allow the content editors to see basically the data as it is. But it would not be editable directly to the content editors because this just simply has to pass through our system here. All right. And one more important thing that is, of course, for the content editor comes very handy. And this is also directly relating, by the way, to our API playground and the transformations, image auto transformations and asset auto transformations that you could do them, is the embedded types within our rich text field. So once I'm working with the rich text editor that is built in, I can just simply make that full screen and directly start working on it, customize it at whatever customization I would like to do so. And here we see two examples. It would be the same image, the same asset that we have within the rich text editor. One would be, of course, resizable simply here, but especially when it comes down to moving to a headless system, you rather want to have auto transformation of those images, right? So for the same reason, here we have that image actually added as an embedded type. In this case, we will see it in a second. On our API playground, you can simply, of course, create those auto transformations directly down for that image because it is embedded and not just simply added as a simple asset here. So that gives you a lot of flexibility from a developer's perspective as well. And yeah, basically also makes the content editor's life easier because they don't need to resize anymore those images here. Let us head then directly to the API playground. If you are familiar with GraphQL, this might also look very familiar. So here we basically create for you the documentation of the content that you are keeping here within GraphCMS. So whenever you want to create queries, you could simply choose here out of these fields. So for example, if I wanted to take a look at, let's say, all of the articles that we keep within the system, I can simply do so. I could also pass, for example, a where clause and maybe check for one specific category only and really get, again, from the power of GraphQL, just the bits and details and the information that I really need to serve to the front end, which of course allows us not to overfetch or underfetch basically our data. So I can, of course, also simply decide here to get maybe the cover image, get the rich text editor, for example, maybe in a JSON format or other formats that I would wish to go for, and do auto transformation on the asset that we have included down. So this is, again, a very powerful way, of course, to just simply set all of the auto transformation for the assets that you keep within the rich text editor. And of course, once I hit this query, so I can just directly test it here to make it sure that I'm not breaking my code before adding it to the front end. And of course, you can get as deep as you like with the references as well. So as you see here, for the embedded type, that is already works as a reference. It will work similarly as well whenever you are querying union types and so on. Now, once more, of course, there is one more integration that we have not discussed yet, webhooks, API extensions, UI extensions. We also have the mutations that is a very specific GraphQL power that we have, being a native GraphQL system that allows you to programmatically inject the content into the system. In this case, I have a very simple mutation here created where I'm creating a new article. But of course, I can get much more complex to that. Once I do so through the mutation and I head back to our content editorial experience, then I would see there is a new article coming in draft type right away. Typical use case, of course, for example, for reviews, any sort of user-generated content that you want to bring into the system, you could easily do so. Or it could mean, for example, for translation that you bring it, so external translation system, you can also bring the content into programmatically from those services as well. Okay, so now we are heading, of course, to our settings. One more thing to mention here, maybe a couple of more. One would be, of course, the capability to have several environments. So we support that. You can, of course, set up as many as you like in order to test and not break your code and to make schema changes and test out new things on different environments. At the same time, we have also our roles and permissions, so the advanced permission system. Now, out of the box, of course, you would have admin rights, developer rights, editor rights, contributor rights. I am right now logged in as an admin into the system. If I was, for example, logged in as an editor, I would already not see the API playground and neither the webhooks, because I simply don't need to work on that one. That is rather for the development team. But at the same time, with the power of our content and condition-based permissions, you can create, of course, the custom roles as well. For example, in this case, I have a content editor and the content admin created for guides. If we take a look at the content editorial one for the guides, then we see that this specific content editor, once they log into our system, they would be only able to actually access, read, create, update, publish, and unpublish one model's content entries, which would be our articles. So as an admin, I see all of those content entries, all of those different templates. But for this specific user, they would be only seeing the articles. And even within that one, by using the power of creating conditions, only the ones that are belonging into our guides category. Of course, you can get as granular as you like and create permissions on all of the models or specific model level as well, and decide what actions the content editor should be taking, should be doing within the system. And pass the conditions as well down to basically separate, even according to categories or any sort of tagging that you use within the content entries. And as I was mentioning, again, supporting the workflows here. So you can also limit what stage should this content editor publish to. In this case, the content editor would be publishing directly to the approval stage. So from draft and QA up to approval, and the admin, whenever they come into the system, they would have the right to publish on all of the different content stages. Of course, this is that feature that, for example, Gamescom is also using, where they can, exactly with those conditions, they can separate the users coming from all across those different companies in order to not be able to see each other's content and edit only and work on only the specific content. That was one of the reasons why they also decided to go for GraphCMS, because we were the only ones out there in the market who had that granularity when it comes down to the permissions.